I'm Mike Gillespie. Welcome to our case study on a MyDataProtectionOfficer engagement that we've done recently.
What data protection processes and procedures, if any, were in place prior to the start of the project?
So the client had some already good underlying processes and policies in place. Obviously with the introduction of GDPR and Data Protection Act 2018, they were aware of their obligations and they'd worked hard to start to put some baseline processes in place.
Why did the client look to add to their data protection procedures? What issues did they face?
It was not so much about adding to their procedures. They had a well-formed and dedicated information management team function. Where they were struggling was to bring in the competent expertise and experience specifically around data protection to manage the anticipated growth in requirements and also to embed those procedures and processes into the organisation as part of an ongoing BAU culture. So the big problem being public sector was competing against the private sector when it came to how much a data protection officer at the time were able to command in terms of salary and bonuses and things like that. And so they needed somebody who could come in as an interim, help them to embed those processes and make sure that everything was nice and stable, put the good foundations in place. So that's really what they were looking for at the time.
Why did they choose Advent IM?
So the supplier selection process was very heavily weighted towards quality, and Advent IM were able to demonstrate a proven track record of expertise, broad knowledge of GDPR and data protection, but more importantly its practical application within their particular sector. And also one of their key requirements was the need for somebody who was able to communicate in a capable way with their senior leadership team, with their senior management, and we were able to demonstrate the capability to do that as well. So in effect, the ability to be both a competent and effective practitioner whilst also being able to step up and operate as part of their leadership team as well. The fact that Advent also had over a decade's track record of training silos, which meant that we were used to conversing with people at a very senior level, not just in the training itself, but follow-on mentoring as well, gave credence to the fact that we were able to operate at that level for them, and that gave them a great deal of confidence in our communication capabilities.
What deliverables and outcomes did the client expect initially?
So initially it was more coming in and helping to deal with the run rate stuff, so data protection impact assessments, sharing agreements, working with their information access team, especially around contentious subject access requests, freedom of information requests, helping with exemptions, and of course the everyday stuff that all data protection officers have to deal with, information breaches, communications with the ICO, that sort of thing. But in the end, it actually expanded significantly beyond that. So we were asked to look at the underlying levels of compliance and make recommendations on future improvements that could be made. And so that's what we did. As a result of that, we then helped with delivering of training, we developed new policy, implementation of things like appropriate policy documents, internal sharing agreements, cross-organisational privacy notices, as well as improving the information incident reporting mechanism, so bringing information security and data protection closer together, and all the time driving up the awareness and capability and understanding at senior management level as well.
How did the deliverables they received compare to their expectations?
I think we went way beyond their expectations in the end as the scope continued to evolve, the service continued to evolve, and one of the things that the client had been concerned about was the potential for there to be gaps in service during holiday, sickness, things like that, which again was something that they were struggling to resource from an internal perspective. Because we provided an outsourced service, although I was there providing the data protection officer role and fronting the service, they also had access to the entire back office capability of the rest of our consultants. So whenever something came in, at whatever time it came in, regardless of whether I was on holiday or not, there was always somebody there who could pick a requirement up and run with it. And that was something that they found invaluable in the end, having access just to an unrestricted supply of data protection expertise.
How was the project managed and what level of involvement did you have?
So my involvement was very much as the front of the service. So I was known within the organisation as the Data Protection Officer, but we also had dedicated project management capability. We set up dedicated email addresses, secure email addresses, so all requirements came into a central email account. The project management team then picked that up, they triaged it, and then they decided who's the best consultant, depending on the requirement, depending on the nature of the expertise required, and that was then allocated out across the team. So actually, to the client, it was absolutely seamless, because all they knew was that they emailed Data Protection Act, and then they got a response back from Data Protection Act. But behind the scenes, with the project management, the triaging, and the pool of consultants working on it, it just meant that they got this seamless service. They didn't need to know that there was a project management element involved in it. All the way through, as far as they're concerned, they're dealing with me.
Did you show adequate knowledge and expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. Data protection has been a passion of mine. It's one of my core subjects. I'm working with organisations to improve data protection practices and processes and capabilities is an area that I'm very passionate about. I think the fact that I had that level, the depth and breadth of knowledge of data protection and how it's applied within an organisation really shone through. And we started to set up things like local surgeries. We had a regular online session, which was then nicknamed the Ask Mike session, where anybody could drop into a Teams meeting and ask questions around data protection. And it made it very accessible. Because it was accessible and because we were using language, reflecting language back that reflected their business practices, I think staff took to it very quickly and understood what the requirements were. And rather than feel marginalised or scared of data protection, they very quickly came forward and asked for help, which just meant that the service kept improving things continuously.
What is the client's next step in terms of actioning the project outcomes and deliverables?
Since the engagement began with this client, we've worked really hard to supplement their internal capability through mentoring, training, redeveloping processes and procedures, and developing new policy, giving them a capability so that they've now got an internal team that is more capable, more competent and more confident at dealing with queries, incidents, breaches and so on. So really the 12 months ahead are about building on that, increasing capability and really turning their internal compliance team into an internal consultancy team who are able to take on a lot of that workload and to do it with confidence.
Does the client feel that the work completed as part of this project will have a positive impact on their future?
Yes, absolutely. The client feels that with the work that's already been done, the improvement of internal capability and the plans for the future, they can now build on that with additional capability in audit, records management, but also the internal team taking on more responsibility, which in turn is going to allow there to be a greater focus at a senior level on developing long-term strategy, building and embedding culture, and taking the organisation really on to the next level. But the biggest benefit of this is that data protection has become totally transparent within the organisation. We've got staff across the organisation now talking data protection. We've got multiple aspects of the organisation involved in data protection decision making. We've got information asset owners who have data protection on their registers and who are reporting back on data protection compliance, near misses and breaches. So we've got a much better understanding across the whole organisation of what's going on and where those improvements could be made, which is allowing us to target education across the organisation where the risk is the biggest. And picking up on new projects, So new projects coming through now go through a governance process where they are guided through the entire project by the compliance team. Whereas before, data protection would have been something that was bolted on right at the end as a last minute thing because somebody just somewhere along the line said, oh, what about data protection? So it's really become a proactive, embedded, business as usual mechanism now, and the ability to build on that is fantastic.
Will the client choose Advent IM for future needs?
Yes, so we're in the process now of transitioning out of this particular role. Client has now gone out to the market and identified the skill sets that they need for a permanent in-house data protection officer, which was always the plan. It had to be something that in the long term gave them sustainability, which meant we had to transition the capability in-house. But we're already talking to the client about other areas where we can help in digital transformation, in helping out with longer term records management and retention, in the development of new policies for retention, review and disposal. So there's plenty of areas where we expect to be working with this client long term.
Any further comments?
What this engagement has shown, without doubt, is that the Advent MyDataProtectionOfficer service offers a client great value for money. They're only paying for what they use at the end of the day. Whilst at the same time, they're getting access to a pool of proven experts with years of experience across multiple sectors. That means that when new problems come along, you've got a group of people who are able to bring different thinking, different expertise, thinking outside the box, thinking literally and laterally at the problem, and come up with novel solutions, which perhaps one person who's used to being embedded within that sector long term might not come up with. Also, the ability to flex. So there were times when things were really busy and we were able to put several people from the team at it. So you're getting almost a full-time data protection officer for a period of time. Then when things go quiet, we're able to back off, so they're not paying for that time. So across the engagement, we're flexing up and down where the need is the most. But we're not sitting there when there's no work to be done, still drawing down a salary. And we are providing multiple people across multiple projects when things get very busy. It's a great way of drawing down data protection expertise within a defined budget. You set how much you're prepared to pay for across the year. We never exceed that, and we make sure that all of the work we do is fully evidenced, and with the project management wraparound, they get regular reports so they know exactly what's being worked on, how many days and hours are being used, where they're being used, and that allows them then to look at their internal governance and make sure one project isn't unduly benefiting from the service at the expense of other projects. It's a flexible, effective, efficient, but most importantly a proven service that delivers real change and real benefits to organisations. Thank you very much for watching our case study. Don't forget to check out our playlist of other case studies, and of course across all of our social media outlets, all of the great educational content that we produce throughout the year.